Polo TIC Mendoza. Cultivamos la innovación.
Hola a todos, qué alegría poder darles la bienvenida a esta charla con Marten Kaevats desde Estonia. Desde Polo TIC Mendoza estamos realmente muy felices por el nivel de esta convocatoria. Estamos hablando ya de alrededor de 350 personas que se inscribieron para ser parte de esta charla, de entender de qué se trata una sociedad digital avanzada, tomando como punto de partida el modelo de Estonia. Quiero darles la bienvenida, agradecerle a OSDE por el apoyo hacia esta charla. Les pedirles si se animan a decirnos desde qué provincia o desde qué país nos están viendo. Hemos tenido gente inscrita no solo desde varias provincias de Argentina, sino también desde Ecuador, desde Perú, desde México, desde varios países que han manifestado su interés en estar presentes. Queremos también aclararles que en este momento hay dos canales que están saliendo en simultáneo. Un canal 100%, donde Marten va a estar hablando 100% en inglés, que es uno de los que está ahora, y el otro, donde vamos a contar con la labor de Néstor Chiapeta como intérprete para poder traducir al español, ¿sí? Agradecer también al Clúster Infotech, con quienes organizamos este evento, y al Foro Diplomático en Mendoza por el enorme apoyo institucional. Quiero darle la bienvenida principalmente ahora a Paco Bravo, presidente actual del Polo TIC Mendoza. Paco es ingeniero de formación y cuenta con una trayectoria que, cabe destacar, representa el ADN del Polo que tanto nos identifica. Él ha sido gerente de Agua y Energía, Sociedad del Estado, ha sido empresario titular de la empresa Ligüen S.A. y actualmente se desempeña dentro del área de vinculación de la Universidad Nacional de Cuyo. Paco, bienvenido.
Muchas gracias, Nico. Buenos días a todos. En nombre del Polo TIC Mendoza, les damos una cordial bienvenida a este importante evento e incluimos, por supuesto, a los hermanos latinoamericanos de Chile, Perú, Ecuador y México. Es frecuente escuchar que estamos inmersos en una revolución digital que no trata únicamente sobre tecnología, sino también sobre la importancia de las personas y del planeta. Transitamos una nueva era y, por cierto, un nuevo paradigma, que es el paradigma del conocimiento, que incluye la economía del conocimiento, la nutrición infantil, la educación en todos los niveles, pero especialmente entre los 0 y 5 años, incluye también el cuidado del medio ambiente y la mayor y posible inversión en ciencia y tecnología, que son fundamentales para cualquier país. Ante ello, organizaciones como la nuestra, estamos empeñados en desarrollar una campaña para impulsar la transformación digital, tanto en los sectores de la producción como en los diferentes estamentos del sector público, provincial o municipal. Esta es la razón del presente evento, donde esperamos aprender de qué modo los países más avanzados en materia de transformación digital, como lo es Estonia, han logrado avanzar significativamente hacia el cambio de paradigma antes mencionado. Nuestro disertante de hoy, Marten Kaevats, es el Consejero Digital Nacional del Gobierno de Estonia, el país más avanzado del mundo en e-government y sociedad digital, a quien damos la bienvenida y agradecemos profundamente su aporte a nuestra campaña. Les deseamos una provechosa jornada. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Paco. Gracias por estas palabras. Quiero seguir también dándole la bienvenida a Gustavo Giorgetti. El ingeniero Gustavo es vicepresidente de Infotech Patagonia, que es el clúster que nuclea al sector tecnológico en Neuquén y en el norte de la Patagonia. Es profesor también de la Universidad de San Andrés y fundador de ThinkNet, una empresa dedicada a la generación de capacidad organizacional para la transformación digital, que tiene ya más de 10 años de experiencia implementando el modelo estonio de X-Road en Neuquén. Así que bueno, Gustavo, bienvenido, gracias por estar acá.
Gracias, Nico. Bueno, les cuento en 2 segundos un poquito de mi historia. En 2007 tuve la suerte de participar de un viaje de estudios en el Banco Mundial y ahí en varios países de Europa descubrí el modelo de Estonia, ¿no? Y en el 2008 empezamos a adaptarlo y adoptarlo a la cultura latina, acá en la provincia de Neuquén, donde ya está funcionando desde el año 2009. En la actualidad, junto a la Subsecretaría de Innovación Administrativa de Nación y el COFEPUB, que reúne a las 24 provincias argentinas, estamos trabajando en un proyecto de despliegue de este tipo de ecosistemas abiertos basados en X-Road en todo el país. Pero les pido que presten mucha atención a la charla de Marten y su real significado. Por un lado, nos mostrará cómo hacer invisibles los trámites para las empresas y para los ciudadanos, que nos ahorran millones en tiempos perdidos, en tiempos muertos. Estamos hablando del 2 puntos del PBI. Y por otro lado, para las empresas, que convoca a este polo, de todo tamaño, se abre un mundo de posibilidades para desarrollar servicios especializados que no podrían existir si no sobre estos ecosistemas abiertos. Así que estamos hablando de crecimiento económico para todo el país y Estonia es un polo de startup en este momento con su poca población. Así que es una ecuación donde todos se benefician, públicos, privados y los ciudadanos de pie. Disfruten la charla. Gracias.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias, Gustavo, también por habernos ayudado a organizar este evento, haber traído también, hecho el vínculo con Marten. Y bueno, finalmente darle la bienvenida a Marten, a quien estamos ansiosos de escuchar. Marten actualmente se desempeña como Consejero Digital Nacional del Gobierno de Estonia. Él se autodefine como un visionario interno para el gobierno estonio y trabaja como si fuera el Director Nacional de Innovación Digital. Esto lo lleva a crear de forma temprana marcos de referencia para que el sector público esté preparado y listo para incorporar las nuevas tecnologías. Este rol se basa también en su vida anterior como arquitecto y urbanista, donde trabajó en la transformación de sistemas complejos. Por lo tanto, Marten estudia el impacto de las nuevas tecnologías en el comportamiento espacial de las personas y las comunidades individuales, ya que cree que la industria 4.0 y el nuevo modelo de vida fuertemente local generarán fuertes cambios en el comportamiento espacial y social de las personas. Y como si esto fuera poco, también Marten es miembro asesor de la OMS, Organización Mundial de la Salud, en temas de salud digital. Esto a partir de un acuerdo firmado entre la OMS y Estonia en noviembre de 2020 para aprovechar los avances de Estonia y poder acelerar la transformación digital en salud a nivel global. Es el responsable de la arquitectura de interoperabilidad en salud digital de los países miembros de la OMS. Fue seleccionado también asimismo como una de las 50 personas más influyentes del mundo que revolucionan la gobernanza digital a través del portal apolitical.co. En esta charla, Marten nos va a contar sobre la exitosa experiencia de transformación digital de Estonia y cuáles son las condiciones iniciales y básicas para poder crear una sociedad digital exitosa. Recuerden que podrán dejar sus preguntas y reflexiones por medio del chat en YouTube. Esta charla se está transmitiendo en 2 canales en simultáneo. Para quienes desean escuchar la interpretación al español, pueden hacerlo mediante el link que les estamos dejando en este momento en el chat. Marten, thank you so much for joining us today. The screen is yours.
Hello, everyone, and welcome from a very cold place in the world. Tonight, the temperature here in North Europe went below -25. So that's pretty different than the climate you got there in Argentina now. My brother, whose wife is Argentinian, was just spending 3 months in your country. So I do understand that the climate is very different. But thank you for the kind words in the very beginning. I can also show in our country there is quite a lot of snow. Okay, there is up, you can see there is snow. So basically, thank you for the kind words. I don't speak Spanish, but I do understand. In Estonia, I'm basically the person responsible for everything digital and innovation related. And also, I'm currently working with the World Health Organizations to help to move information in a trustworthy way. So, but there is lots of complicated words, but in reality, I am a community builder. So in order to build communities, you need to have trust and you need to have common vision. So this is the kind of work I'm trying to do, and now in the global level as well. So it's so nice that there is so many of you listening, both in English and in Spanish. And today I have been given 40 minutes to explain a couple of things. First, I would like to explain a bit about Estonia, how it's, what is the experience in living in a digital society, and what are the key points that any given government or municipality or any public sector can do in order to make the lifestyle more digital. But then I would also like to explain also the work we are doing currently in the WHO. So in order to get this world back moving, I'm responsible for building the global trust framework so that COVID vaccination certificates could be recognized cross-border. So that is one of the projects that also in a later phase I would like to explain. And also, I'm working together with the ITU and several other colleagues. ITU is the International Telecommunication Union. That's another acronym or an international organization that is responsible for all of the global standards in ICT. So with that organization, we have also started a project which we call GovStack. And this is about building reusable building blocks for digital governance. And that I will be explaining in the very final end, where we could understand how this Estonian experience can actually help you guys in Latin America to basically step by step build more trust and hopefully abolish all the bureaucratic bullshit bingo that all the stupid hassle that your governments are making your people to do. I think we can do it more easily as well. But again, you need to acknowledge that this transformation from a paper-based bureaucracy to digital governance actually has got very little to do with technologies. There is some impact, of course, and I will explain those specific nuances, but it's mainly to do what is happening between your ears, like the mindset and way of thinking and the culture behind that is much and more profoundly more important than the different gadgets your governments or you yourselves might deploy. And in order to get that, I think it's important to have a plan, a kind of a very abstract roadmap. And my job before the pandemic mainly was to also fly around, been to Argentina a couple of times and Chile and Colombia and in LATAM about 7 times a year. So I think it's important to have a plan. And one of the comments would be that I would still see that many of the governments today actually lack any sort of a plan. There is probably millions and billions even spent on producing a lot of pieces of paper and also deploying some technologies, but in the end, not necessarily those things might work. And also some comments about the current pandemic. I think Estonia as a government has been one of the most well prepared for such an event when all over our physical infrastructure at the moment, at some moment became obsolete. So meaning that all Estonian governmental functions have been intact, meaning that we can vote and we can make decisions, we can pay taxes. Just a small example yesterday was I did my taxes in 30 seconds, 30. So I think I've spent less than 15 minutes ever in my lifetime declaring taxes. So that's one of the very small and practical ways of explaining how a digital society can actually help your life. Like, I think most people actually don't like doing taxes. They might want to do proper citizens, but filling out all the stupid numbers in various different places, it's for many people, even understanding what this means, it's very difficult. So I think the Estonian model is the most biggest part is about making the lives of citizens actually better and easier. And then the key point here is that government is not here to punish you. Government is here to help you. And making this transition from a modernistic paper-based bureaucracy to a digital society, that's a very, very long way. And Estonia is not even there yet. Like, we have much things to do, and I will try to explain those things today as well. One of the main points is that if you want to build a digital society, you need to start with education. Like, people need to trust and need to be able to use those things. And then in Estonian case, this started already in 1997. So we had vast educational program, and so also the private sector was very, very actively part of that. Basically, the private sector paid for the digital education of 18% of the whole population because, well, it was practical for them. They could transfer their clients into web, and that was very, very, very cost effective also. But other key elements would include, though, in order to have a digital society, however you see it, whatever kind of political views you have, you more or less need to solve three different problems. The first thing is that you need to have a digital identity. Like, paper-based identities do not cut it in the digital age. This identity needs to be secure, and you need to be able to sign legally binding documents with it. If you don't have those things, basically the way of authenticating yourself in the internet environment, plus the ability to legally bindingly sign documents, then calling it a digital society is kind of absurd. And however a government chooses to solve that problem, that's theirs. But you need to be able to know that who is who. And if there's many people in the world who are saying some strange things about it, it's also, in order to preserve your own privacy, you need to have a strong digital identity. So that's one. Second thing is the X-Road part. And this is the interoperability or data exchange architecture layer. And this is actually a very good example to be talking to you here also, together with Gustavo Giorgetti from ThinkNet, is that Neoken has already had that experience on the leadership and the guidance from Gustavo since 2008, which I think was mentioned also before. But this is more fundamental than just exchanging data together. So it's not only a technology, meaning X-Road, but it's also a governance framework and a legal framework. And the point here is that when we're working with public sector data, then I would say that the legal framework behind that, who is responsible for what, and who is accountable for what information, and how the data moves, is actually more important than the technological exchange layer itself. But X-Road as a concept, as a wider concept, has all of those three things, meaning you have the governance or the administrative model, then you have the legal model, how to do the contracts between the various different participants in the network. But you also have the technical exchange layer, and this is into one thing. And this is very important because X-Road is a concept of distributed governance. What does that mean is that we don't have a central server. We don't have where all the data goes together. Yes, there are some central services that provide, facilitate some utility for the ecosystem, but in reality, it's a distributed ecosystem. So in a very broad sense, X-Road is a tool for ecosystem builders. So if you want to build an ecosystem, that also might include public sector, then I would still say that X-Road is your best choice. And that's why it's very good to hear that all of this discussion on data interoperability in Latin America is moving further, and there is a lot of interest expressed towards X-Road and the different ideas behind it. But it's a very simple thing. And what's also important that X-Road is a digital public good. So this is open source. It's developed together, and its development is financed together currently by Estonian government and Finnish government. But also this year Iceland will join. So 3 governments will be also annually putting money into the development of this open source solution. And I think that kind of gives the resilience for the project, because governments are officially committed and giving money to that as well. So these are the 2 things: identity and data exchange architecture. In terms of data exchange architecture, X-Road is one of the choice, but there are some governments that also might choose another one. And more notably, it's the Chinese model. It's basically making a centralized server and having a kind of a big brother angle to life. And this is one of the parts where I would like to say that this is something that is not resilient, because concentrating all of the data to one place, it's a question of liability, because it's not a question, if you put all the eggs together into one basket, then it's not a question of if this basket will fall down, it's only a question of when. So if you want to build your system secure, private, and yeah, in LATAM, you come from democratic societies, then I think having a distributed architecture approach is the most sustainable and future-proof solution that might be out there. But as I mentioned, there's also a third problem every government needs to tackle, and the third problem basically is about data integrity. Data integrity is a concept or a need that if information moves from point A to point B, or is within one of those systems, then we need to be sure that nobody changes it, or if somebody changes it, there is a track record of that change. And a very simplified example of it is like, I have a blood type A positive. So this is my private information, my personal health data, but well, I don't mind sharing this with you, because what can you do with that? But if anybody changes this piece of information in the Estonian governmental files, then it's a problem for me, because if I'm in an accident and ambulance comes and puts some blood into me in order to save me, but the blood is the wrong type, then that's bad, because probably I'll die. So that's the need for data integrity, it's reasonable to have an extra layer of transparency and integrity to keep everything more or less intact, especially when we are working in an environment where there's lots and lots of different governments, authorities, municipalities, hospitals, whatnot. There's quite a lot. In Estonia, there is about 651 different organizations connected together with X-Road, and all of those different systems have different architectures and technologies, and we need to be able to be sure that the information integrity in those systems is intact. In Estonia, we have been using blockchain for that since 2008 April, and in productional level, and since 2012, all governmental information systems log files have been blockchain. And every citizen can go to a governmental website and see who has been looking at their data, when and why. So if these are the few architectural elements that every government should have, then I think it's also important to understand what it means for people. Like I mentioned with the taxes, like I don't really want to do them. But also another example would be, we haven't used paper in public sector for 10 years now, also in healthcare. Yeah, of course, some people print some stuff out because they like the feel, but we can do everything online, like for 10 years already. All of the different government services, with few exceptions, like getting married and buying, selling real estate, can be done online. This means that we can vote online since 2005. We can, I don't know, again, the taxes thing since 2001. all kinds of different governmental services that you could imagine can be done digitally as well. And this is very convenient because during the pandemic, when people were sitting in their homes, they can still do all of their things and not necessarily need to go to the office or something like that. So it's a very convenient, and again, the goal here is that the goal is not necessarily to do everything in a very efficient way only. Although Estonian government has the most efficient public sector per capita globally because of these digital solutions. So that is one of the reasons we actually went for digital, is that paper-based bureaucracies are expensive. Nowadays, it might seem absurd because governments keep on ordering different ICT solutions, and these cost usually like millions, or in the case of Argentina, probably tens of millions or hundreds of millions of euros, but they keep on failing. There is, like all across the planet, there is such investment putting into a new healthcare information system or a tax system or whatnot, and they keep breaking down and failing. And one of the problems why these keep on breaking down and failing is the point that nobody actually has a plan. You might have a plan for one piece in the puzzle, but you don't necessarily have, or many places in the planet don't have a way of putting those different puzzle pieces together. And that is what, for example, the X-Road, the blockchain, and the identity do for us. In order to actually have a coherent digital society, you need to have a way of interoperating between various different technologies and different systems. But also, as I mentioned, the mindset is really, really important, or the key here. I think it's important to keep an open mindset towards technologies, because one of the problems that we are facing everywhere in the world is that probably all of you have seen this kind of an exponential growth curves of human population. The amount of people is growing, and also the technologies and the rate of innovation is growing. So one of the hugest problems is that we need to stay open towards technology, and this open mindset is the one that helps us to actually move, because we need to acknowledge that digital is always broken. Meaning that if you go into the high detail of government's infrastructure, there is always one link that doesn't work, or there's the interface is ugly as hell and you cannot find your solutions there. But if you have this kind of an open mindset, then you can help the government to fix those things step by step. But also, more importantly, the government itself needs to acknowledge that they are here to help people rather than to punish them. And this is something that many public sector of people actually don't acknowledge. They think that, yeah, we just spend money rather than make them or help to make them. Public sector is here to help to create the trustworthy environment where innovation and new ideas can form. Government is here to make creative people be creative and help them to overcome their different obstacles and problems. It's not about putting people into jail necessarily. It's about actually defining what human-centric governance is. And this is what Estonia is trying to do in our much smaller scale than Argentina. We're 1.3 million people in north of Europe. It's a rather small country, but I think we are in a very good position to actually show this, that different kind of government is actually possible. And this is we try to kind of give hope, but it's important to understand that many people ask and say that Estonia as a government is a very strange use case, meaning that it cannot necessarily be copied in other places, and this is not true. There is a lot of different these concepts of community building and mindset and helping to automate public sector bureaucracy has been taken in many places. There is about 70 different places that in the world use X-Road. Japan has taken the national identity model, for example, and it's not a question of scale. Scale is relevant. We are 1.3 million people, but Japan is much more, Germany is much more, and there are much bigger countries that can do that. It's rather about building the culture in a resilient way. And this is different in each of the contexts. So basically, sorry, I cannot speak Spanish, but still, I think in order to communicate these ideas of building a next generation web, which is based on trust, we need to actually have few of these ideas, and yeah, some of them come from Estonia, but some of them come from other places of the world as well. New Zealand, for example, is pretty good. Canada, Finland, Iceland, very good examples of distributed governance. Singapore, of course, is also very good. But the difference between Estonia and Singapore is that Singapore still has a highly centralized system. So that's a bit different. And they have built their own internet basically for government, which I would say is unreplicable in other places, because you need to have a second set of cables throughout your country, which in a country the size of Argentina is unimaginably expensive. But in terms of the scale, I would also like to explain the work I'm doing with the World Health Organization. Been a member of the Digital Health Technical Advisory Group there for 1.5 years already, and this was pre-pandemic, so it was the time when we were able to travel and so on, and we started working on interoperability. So basically, how to get data from one system to another system. These systems might be different technologically, but mainly there is a legal difference. So there's a broad border here, and you need to move the data somehow. And we were looking for different use cases, how to build interoperability. And one of those use cases, which was actually exactly 1 year ago, the WHO presented that maybe we could digitalize the yellow vaccination card. If you remember or has seen, there is this yellow card that has your name on it, and where the doctor puts all your vaccination information. Then this is a very paper-based system, but we were thinking that maybe we can augment that and make it more secure via digital means. And one of those examples is for example, I have a colleague from Congo who said that, yeah, in Congo airport, you can buy that yellow vaccination card for yellow fever with $5. And it's just before the passport check. So you buy this document and you show it to the passport and everything is legit. It's not. So we exactly 1 year ago, we started working together with the World Health Organization in order to create a smart vaccination certificate. And of course, because of the pandemic, it's in everybody's mind. It's in order to start traveling in a secure way of not spreading the virus across the planet, we need to have some trustworthy mechanisms in place to get this traveling moving on. I don't know what's the situation in Argentina or in other Latin American countries. I haven't been talking that much. But in order to do that, the current status is every country is most likely to build their own different vaccination certificate solutions. The WHO, together with Estonia, with us, we've been setting up the minimum viable technical requirements for those different vaccination systems. And the problem is that each of the governments will most likely will have their own, a bit of a different system. But the idea is the same, that, for example, I am Marten Kaevats and I got vaccinated in Perth. You probably heard this name in Perth for the first time. Perth is the biggest hospital here in Thailand. And everybody here knows it, but nobody in your country knows about it. And that is the kind of the problem we are trying to solve on a global level. In order to make these different vaccination certificate solutions that different governments are deploying, And if there is any interest from your governments, then there are many different solutions around. You can also look at India and Bangladesh. They are doing an open source vaccination certificate called DIVOC. So if you dig into open source, then check out DIVOC. But there is also many private sector solutions around, and I think in order for getting your citizens to move globally across the borders, you will need to get some kind of a certificate solution as soon as possible. But also, this certificate solution needs to comply with the WHO standards. Otherwise, you cannot do international travel with it. But there is one more thing that you need in order to make this various different vaccination certificates solutions to work together. And one of them is in order to make those different solutions interoperate, you need to have a trust framework. And this trust framework needs to be a global trust framework. So various different countries and governments could participate with their own solutions, so that the other guy in the border of Argentina, for example, or Bolivia, or Ecuador, or Chile, would be able to know whether this piece of information that the citizen is showing them came from a trustworthy source or not. And it's absurd because what we are doing in reality is we are creating a global trust framework, which is not moving any personal data whatsoever. The main problem in getting the planet moving today is actually a legal problem. In order for these different solutions to work, one government needs to trust information from another government. And although many governments are doing small bilateral contracts between their neighboring countries to get some mobility across the borders working, then in reality, if all of the countries would do legal contracts with all of the other countries, that would mean like 36,000 contracts. Can you imagine the public sector working through so many contracts? It's insane. It can't be done. Public sector is slow as hell. So in order to combat that, together with the World Health Organization, we are deploying a global trust framework. We are piloting it already. So if in your countries there is vaccination certificate solutions deployed, then you can link into this global trust framework, and we can start piloting and testing the cross-border aspect. And funnily enough, the only thing, well, there's a couple of things that the global trust framework does. But in order to understand the main thing they do is that whenever you would see any kind of a document, a piece of paper or digital, it's no matter what's the form of the document, but you need to be able to know if this information came from a trustworthy source or not. In the case of vaccination certificates, the trustworthy source can be considered a certified healthcare provider, which is basically a hospital or a medical center in your neighborhood. And funnily enough, there is nobody in the world that knows in a database or somewhere all of the names of the different hospitals or medical centers in each of the country. In each of the countries, for example, in Estonia, we have the health board that has a database or list of all of the different certified healthcare providers, basically all of the hospitals like PER and different medical centers that we have. But as I mentioned, you guys in Argentina don't know that. And we don't know the hospital names in Buenos Aires or Neuquén, for example. Like, in order to make this interoperability work, we need to publish these lists of certified healthcare providers. And again, mentioning we're not moving any personal data whatsoever in this layer. But basically, we need to be able to securely query the information from their original source. And this is important for bureaucracy because although Google might know where the hospitals in Neuquén are, and also in Estonia, when you would Google hospital or medical center, you would probably get to the right location. then for bureaucratic and legal purposes, we need to get the information from the original source. Probably in Argentina, there's some public sector authority that has this information, that has all of those different organizations that are providing medical services. And we need to be able to check that, whether a hospital or a medical center actually currently has a permit to practice medicine. If we know that, then we know that the next step, which is the vaccination certificate itself, it can be valid. But also you need to have a certificate solution to do that. In order to do that, we are actually in a pilot phase, which means that Estonia, Iceland, Hungary, Serbia, Seychelles, India, and Bangladesh will be starting to pilot this trust framework, inviting you guys with your governments to participate. So if you want to get cross-border interoperability actually tested and piloted, then let Estonian Foreign Ministry know that you're interested, or the diplomats in Geneva, for example. And we can start actually working. But in order to do that, you need to have a certificate solution yourself. And this solution needs to comply with the WHO standards that I think came out this week. Also, as I have only 8 minutes to go, I will explain a little bit about how all of these different ideas that I've been trying to explain you in the last half an hour actually can start helping your governments or municipalities or hospitals in a very, very practical way. Together with ITU, Germany, and DIAL is one of the UN agencies for digital impact. We are creating basically the global design principles for digital governance. We call it the digital building blocks, or a GovStack. And this is a work in progress. We even don't have a web page yet. But basically what we do is that we take these ideas of digital governance and the automation of routines into a hyper modular level, so that, and we would make those building blocks reusable and open source as digital public goods. So what it means is in a next couple of years, we'll be deploying baseline digital governance technologies starting from Africa or low resource settings, but the same modules can be used in Estonia, in Finland, in Singapore, in Argentina, in Ecuador, in Peru, in other places as well. So with this spring, we will be publishing the technical specification. So if you're a person that somehow works together with the public sector, then the most critical is to get this architectural concept of the digital building blocks, which basically are like Lego blocks. Everybody can make their own Legos, put them together in a way that suits your needs, but also share the code, and so that other public sector authorities could also use it in other governments and places. Sure, there are some parameters that are different, like the legal environment in Argentina is different from the legal environment of Estonia, but all of those different components should be there. And this is important because you actually want to make your government work, like really work in an efficient way, and not be the entity that kind of punishes and is the not necessarily might be even evil in places. Then having this kind of underlying technologies that help to build transparency, and through transparency build trust. So I think these are very, very important and necessary. In order to actually do that, we are opening up a call for experts for different building blocks, and we will be publishing the technological mumbo jumbo in a piece of paper, so all of you nerds who actually know coding would be able to read and also comment those things. And I think that will be happening in a couple of weeks. You can add me on LinkedIn. Probably all of that information will start moving and flowing from that location as well. But if you're interested in actually making any kind of public service better in your government or municipality, then I think when we have acquired the kind of the authority and the recognition from the global standards organizations, meaning the ITU, International Telecommunication Union, and IEEE, which is the biggest union of engineers that are setting the different global standards, then this piece of information will become also a digital public good. So what it means that anytime you will do any kind of a digital service, you can use that as a kind of a blueprint, and you need to only know what problem you need to solve. And you need to know that well, but still, there is technical assistance on the global level coming, and we have large-scale international players such as the European Union and the World Bank and many, many others already bought into the idea. And also we are deploying some first early use cases in the Horn of Africa region, so Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and that part of the world. Hopefully this year, maybe beginning of next. So trying to recap a bit, looking from this part of the world, I'm pretty sure that there is a lot that we could do together. Again, if there is any interest towards this idea, please contact Gustavo. He is our man in your country. He also can speak Spanish, not like me. But also, it's mainly the question of building a society and a community that is built on trust. So, for example, if your current status is that your elected officials are corrupt bastards and they're skimming money from places, I don't know, start building transparency technologies. That might help step by step. But you need to understand that this is a cultural change rather than a technological change. Because in order to start to automate all the different processes, you need to have an open mind. And the main thing is, don't build monoliths. Don't build big pieces of infrastructure that making changes to this big piece of infrastructure is hard. Please try to build on microservices, so small modular architecture, so that the small modules are usable. But what does that mean on a larger strategical goal is that the concepts of digital architecture and digital governance architecture are becoming more and more important. It's not about necessarily only about politicians saying that, oh, we are going that way, but it's about actually having the competence within the civil service itself. I know in many of your countries where the civil service is highly politicized, then it's important to have this sense of community to actually help step by step to build trust. And it's also important to have the whole society there, meaning like you need to have the government, you need to have the civil society, you need to have the businesses. And that's what governance is about. It's not about government doing something, nor it's about the private sector doing something. It's about basically creating this middle layer, common ground, where all the different stakeholders can contribute all of the information, and hoping that this system, which in the Estonian and hopefully in the global healthcare context is called X-Road, can connect all the different bits and pieces together. I know that I don't know how much you know about these things, but if you are interested, please do check out eestonia.com. There is a lot of different case studies, explanations, and stories how these different problems have been solved in various different places in Estonia. And also, if you do have any interest, please do ask. There is many different people who know these things, both from this overarching architecture, community building, and mindset. But also we can go into specifics like, I don't know, tax system, healthcare, social welfare, or whatnot. So all of these problems can be solved if there is trust, friendship, and community behind that, and if we have the open mind. So thank you. I will stop for now, but I'm hoping that that there is also some questions, and I'm willing to try to answer them, however it's possible and needed. Thank you.
Well, Martin, thank you so much for the talking. There are like 200 people watching us, and I think the interest is quite important. And we have a few questions. And I think the question most important people are asking is, how do you build trust? I mean, how does politicians, for example, can implement something that requires trust from the citizens? I mean, you said it before, trust and a common vision are quite important to build a digital society. How do you build them?
So as I mentioned, trust comes through transparency. So the very easiest step is different mechanisms for transparency can be established, like for various different domains in the society. I don't know, healthcare. But one of the things that is very, very critical is that transparency is nice, but the systems themselves need to be understandable. The problem is that in this world of digital and distributed architecture, the conceptual complexity goes high pretty quickly. So there is like thousands of different parts doing a bit and something happens. In order to make this understandable, we need to design the governance architecture explainability. So the system needs to be explainable for a person who not necessarily knows about, I don't know, blockchain and various distributed identifiers or other AI black box algorithms. By the way, Estonia has about 65 different narrow AI applications in the public sector, and that's makes our lives super easier and cheap because the bots are doing a lot of bullshit for us. But all of these things needs to be explainable and transparent. So if you are able to explain what you do to your grandmother, then that's a good thing. But also, if there's a very cynical nerd who is skeptical, then they would be able to basically go to the raw data and actually check all the things, not private data, but the system architecture and what the information moves there. That helps. But again, this is a long-term process. So step by step, use case by use case, building transparency. And this is very true to my experience in Latin America, where, your political system is mainly black or white. It's either 1 or 0, and everybody is battling constantly, even in the asado. So it's a problem, yeah.
Okay, thank you for the answer. It's quite clear. Another question we have here is Argentina is a federal country with cities, provinces, and a country, and 3 states of power here. We have many cities listening from us, and one of the questions is if we can start from the bottom to the top, like from the cities to the provinces to the country, or the other way around?
So it can be done both ways. If the top leadership is a corrupt bastard, start from the bottom. If you can work from both ways, it's the best. But you can. It doesn't matter. Like Neuquén and Gustavo Giorgetti is doing in Neuquén. It's a very good example. You start in one of the places, and as much as I've heard, it's spreading into other places. So start solving your problems what you can solve. Like there is, I do understand that there is like large currently, like sorry, in this WHO case, I've been like attacked by anti-vaxxers for the past year. They blame me on being big brother. And they actually don't understand. We are just like trying to exchange lists of hospitals. What it means is that although there are large-scale ethical considerations, even in Argentina or in Latin American countries, start from things that you can do and get this positive feedback cycle going. It's but in order to do that, you need to have a plan, and there is some of those elements of policy that need to be there, such as the once only policy. Like Gustavo can explain your ecosystem, what it means, and some of those different ideas. So in terms of governance, you can start from the top, you can start from the bottom. The optimal is to do it both.
Excellent.
Okay.
Paco, do you have a
Nico, la
question,
pregunta.
Gustavo?
La pregunta que tenías ahí de esta persona sobre si hay un área específica de capacitación.
Martin, do you have, Jorge Luis Fernandez Bertin asks us if do you have a specific area in Estonia or somewhere that teaches about the way to integrate data from different sources?
Well, basically, yes, of course. Like Gustavo can do that in your part. That's the X-Road. What's that about? But also in Estonia, we have the e-governance academy. They do courses on different stuff. There is lots of different companies working on these issues, and yeah, we're trying to get more people who can speak Spanish also involved. But currently, yeah, Gustavo is probably the best person to explain those ideas.
Excelente. Okay. Gustavo, ¿querés aclarar?
No, creo que sería bueno también aclarar, si bien se le preguntó sobre arriba y abajo, la forma de abordar el problema, hay algo que Estonia hace muy bien, que es abordarlo de afuera hacia adentro, que sería como un tercer enfoque, ¿no? Y la prueba es que recuerdo que cuando estuve esto lo va a poder verificar Marten, nunca lo hicimos en línea esto, así que espero que no me hayan engañado cuando estuve, pero en 2007 un alto porcentaje, creo que del 50-60% de los sistemas que tenía Estonia y ya no tenía ningún papel en la calle, estaban hechos en Clipper. Clipper creo que Marten lo debe haber escuchado como cuando uno escucha a los dinosaurios. Y sin embargo, los sistemas andaban y no usaban papel, ¿no? O sea, el enfoque de afuera hacia adentro también creo que es importante, ¿no? Y eso hace que se vayan acomodando, como decimos acá, los melones en el carro, ¿no? Cuando van a aparecer, el contexto manda, y me parece que lo que logra transmitir Marten es que hay que crear ese contexto. La OMS está creando ese contexto a nivel mundial y me parece que ese es un enorme paso, porque los distintos países van a empezar a acomodar sus aplicaciones dentro de ese modelo global. Y Estonia lo que ha hecho en el ecosistema es crear eso, justamente, el gran ecosistema a partir de estas pequeñas piezas que él menciona, una de las cuales es el X-Road. Me parece que esa es clave para esto, ¿no? Uh-huh. Así que espero que se vean todas estas cosas. Pero la otra cosa que quiero rescatar, que lo mencionaba un poco al principio, es la enorme posibilidad de desarrollo que aparece a partir de acá. Él lo dijo, con estos building blocks que están creando ahora, cualquiera que vea una necesidad y que piense en una solución, por más que sea una micropyme, va a poder crear ese servicio y lo va a poder poner, ¿no? Sin ecosistema es como que tenemos que crear una gran empresa para poder llegar a ser algo valioso o reconocido. Y Estonia es un ejemplo de startups y de innovación.
Excelente. Bueno, gracias, Gustavo. One more question from Juan Simón. Is there a sort of tool like a gap analysis that can be used to start a foster implementation? There's a digital divide and maybe there's some support available that can be tapped into.
So there is a whole library of different tools available. Like, for example, basically, X-Road is an open source thing. You can download it from GitHub. So there is different things available. But again, the main thing to understand here, please, let's not go into technical things too much, because this is about changing the mindset of bureaucrats. Yeah, and that is the problem. Like, we can set up whatever tools, It's very nice that the 4 of us or the 200 of us use it, but you need to make, or step by step, make the whole public sector use those things. And it's more fundamental. So I think starting from small, understandable use cases, exchanging information, being sure who is responsible for what. For example, in Estonia, the traffic registry knows only 2 things about me. Knows that I have a B category driver's license and knows that I have this kind of a car. Does not know my name, does not know my address, does not know my birthday, because that information is in the population registry. So starting to connect these things makes actually the system much easier, because the boss of the traffic registry does not need to be responsible for maintaining the accuracy of my name. And sometimes names change. People marry and they move from one place to a place, their address changes. So this is a way we can avoid mistakes. And in the public sector, when you talk about, I don't know, the whole population of Argentina, I'm pretty sure that the bureaucracy tends to make mistakes sometimes. Then there are some principles that help to avoid these things. But yes, there is a lot of different tools available on GitHub. You can check it out, ask Gustavo for advice. Some of those things are there. And we're trying to open up as much as possible. Currently, we're changing our laws so that the public sector, all ICT can be open sourced by the public sector. So Estonian government and Finnish government will start contributing heavily into those different modules that could be utilized also for your needs.
Excellent. I think we're here. Sí, Gustavo.
Sí, no, quería mencionar también, porque hay muchos hermanos chilenos de Valparaíso que están presenciando esta charla, porque en uno de los proyectos quizás importantes que tenemos para trabajar es ese puente andino que hablábamos hoy, ¿no?
Sí.
Así que, y eso tiene que ver con lo que yo mencionaba, porque quiero reforzarlo porque es muy importante, esto de afuera hacia adentro, ¿no? Yo creo que Latinoamérica podría dar un salto cualitativo espectacular, no cambiando sus gobiernos electrónicos, que se está poniendo mucho esfuerzo en eso, sino simplemente conectando los países primero. O sea, hacer esto que está haciendo la Organización Mundial de la Salud a nivel del comercio internacional, y el ejemplo de Mendoza con Valparaíso me parece que va en ese sentido, y a partir de ahí empezar a ajustarnos hacia adentro cada una de las partes. Me parece que ese es el gran camino, y bueno, y lo está enseñando Estonia de alguna manera, ¿no?
Efectivamente.
Yeah. One other comment. I see Carlos Palotti saying that change of mindset of bureaucracy is not easy to solve. If you start small and also talk about it, this is what we are doing here. Like I tell that, look at the good work that Gustavo is doing in Neuquén. Like, let's celebrate those things. It comes use case by use case. The more we speak about those positive examples, the more we can change the mindset. So start small, start in places where you can actually have an impact on people's lives. Like, I don't know how long does it take you to do taxes in Argentina, but I'm guessing it takes more than 30 seconds. Yeah. So start, maybe there is problems in healthcare, likely, like education, definitely. I've heard that some of the students in your country, like they don't even have computers or a connection. Well, it can be solved step by step, but have that mindset of celebrating those victories, because that's the only thing how you make it. Like, this digital transformation should not be boring bureaucracy. You should celebrate those changes on an everyday basis, and that helps you to keep your mind sane as well, because there is a lot of bullshit we need to shove through.
Nico, pregunta por favor,
Jorge.
¿qué importancia tiene? Hola, ¿me
Sí.
escuchás, Nico?
Sí.
¿Qué importancia tiene el nivel de conectividad en toda esta transformación?
Paco is asking, and several persons are asking the same. How important is connectivity access, internet access to all the population to having a digital society? And in the same sense, what's the percentage of access in Estonia to internet?
99.8, but we are pretty good. But this should not be the obstacle on why not to do. Because, for example, in governments like Congo that I mentioned, or in other places, yes, making the infrastructure of connectivity is expensive and it needs to be done. That's clear. But saying that we cannot start building a digital government because many people don't have connections is not an argument. You can start building a government. You can start educating the public sector. You can start building the services. And when the connection reaches the rural population, then they can also. In Estonia, you can do everything on paper as well, but we choose digital because it's convenient. But so it's not about that you make everything only digital. Everything can be done the old school way as well. But you need to start educating the public sector, and this takes long. If the main problem is that, I do get it that many places don't have connectivity, and it is a problem. But you need to do parallel procedures in a way, and it should not be an argument why not to do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Marten.
Excelente. Paco, ¿querés cerrar? ¿Querés dar un cierre?
No, lo único decir que la verdad que la gran esperanza nuestra es que todos hayan podido rescatar de la conferencia lo suficiente como para tener una inquietud cierta para aportar a este cambio que buscamos de paradigma, que es el paradigma del conocimiento. Todos tenemos que poner a esto. Los niveles de responsabilidad, por supuesto, que empiezan con los dirigentes del gobierno, pero eso no significa que nosotros estemos exentos de responsabilidad. Nosotros nos quejamos de que en Mendoza la conectividad no es buena, el nivel de conectividad o capilaridad de las conexiones, pero creo que tenemos que hacer una autocrítica general, porque hay distintos niveles de responsabilidad. Por supuesto, no es responsable el chico que el año pasado perdió todo el tiempo, todo el año de educación porque no tuvo acceso a Internet. Él no tiene ninguna responsabilidad. Pero yo siento que nosotros sí las tenemos. Sobre todo las organizaciones de la sociedad civil podemos hacer mucho para cambiar eso. Y estoy de acuerdo con Marten, que eso no es un impedimento para poder avanzar en el cambio cultural que necesitamos, para poder realmente transformar a los gobiernos en un gobierno sin papeles. Estoy totalmente de acuerdo con eso. Pero la conectividad es un elemento sustancial. Y muchas gracias, Marten. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, gracias a todos. Gracias, Gustavo, por haber facilitado esto. Bueno, gracias, Paco, y desde el Polo poder llevar estas iniciativas adelante que creo que van a lograr un buen eco. Thank you, Martin, for joining us. It was really impressive, all you have to say. And bueno, estamos en contacto. Creo que esto va a ser el puntapié inicial. Desde el Polo estamos trabajando fuerte en estas iniciativas de transformación digital, especialmente hacia el gobierno. Así que bueno, confiamos en que esto no quede solo en una charla, sino que genere acciones a partir de esto. Así que bueno.
Thank you so much, Marten.
Thank you so much.
Ciao. And I didn't even talk about the interesting stuff.
Okay.
Ciao.
Ciao.